Welcome to the Smart Dating Academy podcast. I'm Bela, the founder of Smart Dating Academy and your host. I started Smart Dating Academy in 2009 because I had this crazy knack of giving people dating advice that actually worked, that I took. I've been married for almost 25 years, and now my company helps people to date smarter and to find love. This podcast is meant to bring more love into your life, no matter where you are and what you do. And we're here to bring more life into your love. Smart daters, welcome back to the Smart Dating Academy podcast. I am so excited to have a dear friend and an incredible resource for all of you. So make sure you've got your notebooks and your pens or your iPhones out to take notes. Today, I am delighted to have Wendy Sterling here with us. She is a divorced women's empowerment and healer. Okay, that was great. Wendy, correct the title for me. You are a divorced woman's goddess.
I'll take that. I am a divorced women's empowerment coach and healer.
Oh my gosh. All right.
But we can just call me a goddess. I mean, I'm in. So
she's the goddess Wendy, but no, with all seriousness, she is not only, when I met her, she was a divorce coach and a healer, and now she's an empowerment coach and healer. And I can tell you, she's doing amazing work. And Wendy and I have been friends for a couple of years through our friend, Susan Guthrie. I think Susan introduced us. Yes. Love Susan, who's the host of the Divorce and Beyond podcast. And Wendy has just written a book, which I got, and it's called Divorce Sucks, Now What? And I was like, holy moly, I need to have Wendy on this podcast right away to share her story with you. Even though we've known each other, I didn't know all of the depths and how incredibly relevant her story is. And Wendy even did one of our online dating love labs. And spoiler alert, we'll come back to that later. So Wendy, thank you for being with us.
Oh my goodness. Thank you for having me. And what an introduction. I adore you. And I'm grateful to be here to share some wisdom with your listeners today.
Tell us your story.
Well,
we're jumping right in. I'm in. You know me. Let's go.
I know. Let's go. So I will never forget the night that my ex-husband and I were driving home from a couple's night out. And that night was about 6.5 years ago. And his phone didn't ring once. It rang 5 times. And it was a female colleague of his who was calling him very late at night. And while I knew that they were friends, that moment in the car, I knew that there was way more going on than just a friendship. And while none of us get married thinking that plan B is ever something we're going to embark upon, that night really informed me that that was the new road that I was heading down. And more importantly, what it taught me was that I had lost myself. I fell asleep at the wheel of my marriage. And that night, man, did I get woken up. It was like the 15 years of our marriage just flashed in front of my face going, how did I miss this? And, while he denied until he couldn't, anymore until I found the evidence.
What was the evidence? Tell us about this moment, because we were just backstage chatting about something about this moment.
We were. So the evidence was found on an iPad that was left on the nightstand. And the evidence came in the form of, emails that just conveniently didn't get deleted. And so it was very evident to me that the man that I thought I was married to was not the person that I called my best friend and my husband. And so I really took, about a year to really figure out what it was that I wanted. We have 2 boys. At the time, they were 7 and 10. Oh. And, if we didn't have kids, it would have been an easy get out. I'm done. We're divorcing. But when you have kids, there's a little bit more of a thought process that is involved in that.
A little.
just a smidge. And so what I decided to do was to really use that time to find myself. I really, it's funny. I knew who I was in corporate. I had built a 20 plus year corporate career in, the digital ad space, and was, one of the leaders out here on the West Coast building multi-million-dollar regions. And I was confident and I knew who I was at work. But yet for some reason, when I got home, all of that just completely disappeared. And I was in therapy. We were actually in couples therapy. Clearly, neither of us were really being honest with one another, or even with ourselves, around where it was that we were. And I knew that I needed something more. I felt very stuck. I was reading, all these books, listening to all these podcasts. And while I was learning a lot of information, I had no idea how to then, okay, well, what do I do? How does this apply to my life?
Right.
So,
knowledge is one thing, right? And execution is wholly another.
Yes, execution with accountability, which I was really bad at. So I would make up excuses just like most of us do. And so I knew that I needed something more. And of course, the universe hands us what we need when we ask for it. And that came to me in the form of a Facebook post from a friend who became a life coach. And I thought, what the heck is a coach? And so we set up a call, and 3 hours later, not only had I hired a friend to help coach me through this next phase of my life, but I also decided to sign up to become a coach, because I go big or I go home. I thought, well, if I become a coach and hire a coach, I'll be through this real fast.
Right.
And what I ended up experiencing was that in the course of just a 3-day weekend, I had moved through more emotions around my divorce than I had the entire 8 months before in therapy. And so I knew that there was something really special to this. And I had the foresight to journal my experience and how it was that I was applying what I was learning in being a coach to how I was applying that to the emotional roller coaster that I was on because of my divorce. And so where that got me was to a place where I was able to stand in my power and to confront my ex-husband about a year later in our couples therapist office to say, okay, what do you want? Where are we at? Like, where's your head at? And him saying, I don't really know. And me looking him dead in the eye and saying, well, I do, and I'm done, and I want a divorce. And I walked out of the office. It was somewhat of an out-of-body experience because I almost had no idea what had just happened. And it was when I got to my car and looked in the mirror and went, oh my God, what did I just do?
Wow.
And so it was one of those like, yes. And then, oh, can I swear?
Of course.
Okay. And then it was, oh shit. Oh shit. Oh my God, my kids. Oh my God. What did I just do?
What did I just do?
What did I just do? And it was a mix of fear, excitement, adrenaline, and just certainty. It was just like this cocktail that I had never experienced before. And to top things off, and as you know, in my book, because I share this as well, that was in the morning. And a few hours later, I received a call from my dad telling me that my mom was rushed to the hospital, and they eventually told us that they had discovered ovarian cancer. And so literally within a 5-hour stretch of one day, I essentially was losing the two people who truly were like the foundations for, yes, my rocks. And so my journey really then began in a whole other way that I never expected. And it was one that enabled me to not only stand in the power of my voice, but to also create this amazing business of mine that I have created for myself as an entrepreneur. And it also enabled me to really be present for my mom through a very rough 4.5 years of her cancer battle. And, ultimately, unfortunately, she passed away last January.
So sorry.
Thank you. I talk a lot about in the book how she and I were really walking this parallel journey together around how, we were both very much in our pity parties. And then at one point we both kind of had this, this come to Jesus moment of, we got to shift our mindset, because our mindset is everything in this. And if we shift our mindset, then we can shift the trajectory of both of our paths. And so my mom and I really, she taught me how to live and I taught her how to fight. And so together we were walking in this journey. And I refer to it as almost like a metamorphosis for both of us, where on the other side, I emerged as a butterfly to soar, as did my mom, but her soaring is taking place angelically. And she's really in a place where I feel her every single day. And I know that she's here supporting me on my journey. And I wouldn't be standing here in the relationship that I'm in, the business that I've created, the relationship that I also have with my boys as their mom. I have a great co-parenting relationship with my ex-husband who's remarried. And, it's really what has happened for me is possible for everybody.
100%. And I want to hit a few key points in your book because they so resonated with me. Talk about knowing our worth. Let's go there. And for people that are listening to this, that may be in the dating world, slogging it out like the man in the boxing ring, or somebody who's walking through divorce, or somebody who's even lost their partner prematurely. How do we know our worth?
Yeah. If anybody listening is anyone, can relate to this the same way that how I related to it was my worth was seen through other people. So from when I was a very young little girl, I'm the granddaughter of Holocaust survivors. And so when my family came to this country, it was all about fitting into America. Don't stand out, be like everybody else. And I was anything but that as a little girl. I was very outspoken. I was very tomboyish. I was into everything. I had an opinion about everything until that part of me got silenced because I was too much. I was, too loud. I was too outspoken. I was too this, too that. And so what I ended up developing was this behavior of really seeking from outside of me confirmation that, oh, I'm doing this right. Oh, okay. I'm awesome now. Like I'm good, right? People like me. And so it became this behavior that I just grew up with, brought into my adulthood, and ultimately brought into my marriage. So I lived into this identity of myself that everybody else saw. So my worth was rested in other people's opinions of me. There were so many moments throughout that year that I was separated where it just hit me like a ton of bricks, where, it was like, even just filling out a dating profile, it was like, I don't even know what is good about me. Like, who's going to want me? I'm in my 40s. I'm divorced. I have 2 kids, and I'm an entrepreneur, who's going to want me? I'm old, right? Has been. And that was very much my mindset for quite some time. And so the process by which I was able to gain back my sense of self-worth, and a way that I really teach my clients is, it starts with you, first of all, finding yourself again, right? Not looking outside, but you looking inside and seeing what it is that is important to you in this life, and distinguishing what your truths are from, our ego, those inner critics, those judgmental, negative voices that are inside of our heads, and to also love everything about us, right? There were parts of me in my marriage that I'm not proud of, and it's something that I've worked really hard to own, and to also vow, like, I'm never going to be that perversion of me again, right? Like, that's not to say that there aren't moments where, she creeps out every now and then, and I'm like, oh, wait, like, this is kind of coming out again. I gotta,
put her in the bottle.
Exactly.
Put her back in the bottle.
Yes, put her back. and, come at it as a different way. But really, in order for you to know your worth, you have to love everything about yourself, including who you showed up as within your marriage. Marriage takes two people. You get to own 100% of your 50%. And until you're able to do that, that also means looking at the ugly stuff, right? Looking at the parts of you that you're not necessarily as proud of. And also to distinguish that you are not your mistakes. Your mistakes,
Absolutely.
Your mistakes are how you learn. It's how you grow. It's how you do things differently. And so a lot of what your worth plays into is really understanding what it is that is so incredible about you, and not allowing other people to dim. The way I describe it is, don't let others dim your light. You get to shine your light regardless of how other people respond to it. And it takes practice, just like, when you go to the gym and you pick up some new weights, you're building that muscle. And so building back your self-worth is a process, very much like going to the gym and building muscle. It just takes practice. But most importantly, it takes you learning how to love yourself and everything about you.
I love that. And you might be listening to this and saying, well, there's things I don't love about myself, right? And I think, I'm sure, Wendy, you have those, and I have those things about myself. And this is where love can become compassion for yourself. And sometimes we think, oh, I have to love the fact that I don't love my weight, or I have to love this. And gosh, am I ready to date because I don't know that I love myself? I'm like, what you need to do is look at who you are and where you've been, and have compassion for the person who tried, the compassion for the person who did bring her stuff or his stuff to the divorce. Yes, we all contributed in so many ways, right? And having compassion for yourself and saying, I did the best I could with the information I had and the resources I had. Did I do the best I could? And be compassionate to yourself like you would your best friend. And until you do that, that's where we live, and we can get so stuck sometimes. So you don't have to love all the things that you've done, especially if you've made mistakes, but be able to say, you know what? I know I did that. I would do things differently, but that's part of my journey, and move
100%. 100%. And that's where holding yourself accountable, right? Taking responsibility and holding yourself accountable is so incredibly important. The compassion piece, I'm so glad you brought that up. I kind of tie it together with grace, right? Having grace and compassion for yourself. We're human beings. We are not perfect. We are making mistakes. And sure, did it suck that it took my divorce for me to learn all this stuff? Sure. And at the same time, it didn't suck, because I'm the happiest I've ever been. I know my ex-husband is, I believe when he says that he is happy. My kids are happy. My kids are thriving. And so, we're here to learn. We're here to have experiences. And the one thing that drives me crazy is when, I talk with women and they allow their divorce or the failure of their marriage to define who it is that they are, or what is even possible for them down the road. And it's not. It's, and I'm not the only one standing here on the other side living my best life. There's so many of us that are there. It just takes the courage to put one foot in front of the other, and to have somebody guiding you who has got your back and is going to help you get there, and to get there that much faster.
Well, and that comes back to something you said in the book, which is so true. It's knowing your worth, and you are worth the investment in yourself. Where would you be if you didn't if you didn't hire that life coach? And I think in the book, you're like, yep, I ran my credit card through it, and I knew somehow I'd figure out how to pay for it. But if we think
as women, I have so much to say about this. I'm like,
Yes.
we give and we nurture and we write checks for our kids to become tennis pros and learn how to code and la 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 and blah blah blah. And they go to these private schools. But what we don't think is, what am I worth? What is my growth worth? And I am worth investing in. And that's part of saying, I am a human being who wants to get better. And I don't want to be in the same place 1 year from now, because what is the cost of that? It's unquantifiable, right? Think about that.
100%.
What's the cost of being in the same place a year from now? Do you want to be there? I don't think you do, my listener. So think about, if this resonates, where do you want to level up in your life? And know you are worth it. 4 words. Write them with red lipstick on your mirror. I am worth it, right? And invest in yourself. And this is part of knowing your worth. Wendy wouldn't have leveled up and gotten out and been able to use her voice in the therapist's office that day, looking at her husband and going, oh my God, I want a divorce. 4 words. Where did you get that? Because you started to realize what you were worth.
Yes.
And you didn't deserve someone who didn't know how freaking awesome you were. You're the bee's knees, right? You are the cat's meow. And if he didn't know that, peace out, brother.
Yeah. No, 100%. You know, it's so funny because I walked into that office going, if he says he wants to work on it, I'm in. I was ready to just throw it all away. And it really was in that moment where he said, I still need time. And I thought to myself, he's had a lot of time to see what a prize he has had. Yeah. And while I may not have shown up as my best self, I knew how amazing I was, and I was tired of being underappreciated. And to be totally honest with you, I didn't feel like we were friends anymore. Like I was committed at that time because I knew that I deserved better. I deserved somebody who wanted to choose me. And in that moment, that looked like me choosing me. I chose myself in that office. I had walked in praying he would choose. But what is most important at the end of the day is you choosing yourself. And I say that so many times to a lot of women, especially women who are on the fence, right? The should I stay or should I go? I don't know if I should get a divorce. I don't know if I should this. And all I ever say to them is, well, what if you just chose yourself and then figured out, what does that version of you want? Is it the marriage you have? Is it the man that you are married to? If he's doing work, then is it the version that you're seeing him become? But you have to choose yourself first, no matter what, because if you don't, then how are you going to know what it feels like when somebody appreciates you or values you or sees your worth or is your biggest cheerleader?
Exactly. And I'm going to give you 4 powerful words around that. I ask my clients this: what do you want?
Yep.
Right? Not what's good for blah, 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 blah. What do you want, Wendy? What do you want, Bella? What do you want, dear listener? Right?
And do you know how many people can't answer that?
All of them, which is why I'm saying, when I ask people that question, what do you want?
Yeah.
They can tell me what they don't want. I'm like, I'm not looking to form the reciprocal of what you don't want to find what you want, because that's not the answer. What do you want? And that means choosing yourself. What do I want? And if that makes it easier for you to go, God, what do I want? And what you'll start to rattle off what you don't want. Well, I don't want this. I don't want that. No. What do you want? And that's the start of you choosing what's good for you.
Yep. 100%. And we put ourselves last.
Yes.
We will put a credit card down for our children if it's life or death, or as you said, the best school. I mean, I'm looking at colleges we were just talking to. I haven't even looked at price tags yet, but I'm like, whatever he wants. And then when it comes to me, I'm like, oh, how much money's in the bank account? Can I really afford this? The same level, we don't afford ourselves the same level of grace that we do for everybody else in our lives. And what I have learned is that if I don't put myself first, my kids suffer. If I keep putting them first, I suffer. And I can't be here for my children, right? It's the oxygen mask on the airplane, metaphor that everybody talks about, but it's the God honest truth. If you don't put that oxygen mask on first, how are you going to save your kids?
That's right. 100%, 100%. And on this note, we talk about accountability.
Yes.
And you talk about looking at your own side of the street versus looking across the street. And for you, I can imagine it's my husband cheated on me and I discovered he was having an affair. And he blew my life up. But you talk really eloquently about, yes, we can live in that mentality of looking at his shitty side of the street and what he did. But talk about what it meant to you to look at your side of the street and how we should all think about our side of the street.
Yeah, this comes back to what I was saying before, which is that it takes two people to get married, right? It takes two people to make a marriage work, and you have to own 100% of your 50%. I spent way too much time pointing the finger at him going, you cheated, you broke our vows, you ruined our family, you destroyed our lives, you this, you that, right? And sure, he made those choices. He gets to live with that. Not me. Not me. I am not the one that has to look in the mirror every day and know that that is a choice that I made. But what I do have to look in the mirror and own and take responsibility for is how I showed up.
Right. Through the marriage, right?
Correct. How I showed up through the marriage. I did not prioritize my marriage. I prioritized my children. And I prioritized our family, but I did not prioritize our relationship. I was a horrible communicator. I thought he was a mind reader, and he knew me for 22 years. Why couldn't he read my mind after 22 years? Well, because that's just not something humans do. But I was convinced. Yeah. But I was convinced. I'm like, he should know me. He should know this. He should this. He should that, right? Instead of actually opening my mouth and saying, this is what I need. This is how I feel. I would just ruminate and get mad that he didn't read my mind. And then I would blow up at him. I would pick fights because I didn't feel like I got attention. Well, no wonder I didn't get attention because I picked fights with him all the time, right? And so all this stuff, I had to look at myself and go, oh my God, I didn't talk. I blamed him for everything. That must feel pretty shitty. And I know I pushed him away. I pushed my husband away. Wow. And I pushed myself away at the same time, but I pushed him away. And am I sad and sorry? Absolutely. And I have gotten to the point in my healing where a couple of years ago, I apologized to him. I apologized because I was a pretty not nice person to him. And while I don't condone how he handled it, I mean, there were a lot of choices he could have made. He chose what he chose. But until I was able to really go, oh my God, I can't do this again. I need to not do this again. So what am I willing to learn? Well, I need to learn how to communicate. I need language. I didn't know. I had like 4 adjectives to describe my feelings, and they were typically like happy, angry, sad, and frustrated, right? I didn't have this plethora of words at my disposal to use to communicate. So one of the really big foundations of my program is teaching my clients how to communicate where you're not pointing the finger. If you're constantly communicating using you this, you that, you made me. No, you allowed. I am allowing, right? I allowed him, blah, 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 right? I'm allowing him to take up space in my head rent-free. I'm allowing him to take over my emotions. So there's, hence the empowerment piece of what I do is really taking accountability is standing in your power of choice and learning how to do things differently the next time. And so again, until you can own how you contributed to the downfall of your marriage, you, number one, are not ready to be in another relationship. And number two, you're going to stay stuck. It's called denial for a reason. And
yes.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was like,
no.
oh, I'm so, you're like, wow. Keep going.
Okay. No, I mean, it's called denial for a reason. And you choose to stay in denial because it's easier than having to face the ugly parts of who you are. And what I know to be true is that, everybody's like, oh, what's the fast way? What's the fast way? Well, the fast way is the exact opposite of what you're doing, which is diving headfirst in it and through it. Because if you go there and then you pull back and then you go there and you pull back, you're never really allowing yourself to go there. I can sit here and own how I showed up in my marriage because I'm not attached to it anymore because it's not part of who I've become. It is 100% who I used to be, but it is not who I am anymore. I didn't know better. And so here comes the compassion piece again, right? The mindfulness piece of having awareness that is who I was, not getting into judgment around it and choosing to see it differently. Wow, it took this for me to learn that. I'm so glad I learned it now. I'm so glad that, my partner, Jeff, I always say to him all the time, I'm like, thank God you know this version of me because she's really amazing, right? And I can stand here and say that because I know who I don't ever want to be again. And while I know she's still there, she creeps out every now and then, typically around my ex-husband, but I know how to put her back. I know how to shift. So it's not like I'm cured, right? I say
there
in quotations.
Is no cure. We're never perfect. We're never healed. We're never like that person.
No. What I know is how to shift out of it quickly and to go back. Right? To own things, to communicate like I feel, I am upset about, or, hey, I was feeling this when you did that, or holding space for being told, like Jeff and I got into this conversation the other day, and this, again, having to do with owning your side of the street. Like he was like, hey, remember, you asked me to put a pin in this and then you left the room after you finished what you were doing and you forgot to come back to our conversation. Yeah, that didn't feel really good. And I looked at him and I was like, oh my God, you're so right. I totally did that. I'm so sorry. Okay. You have my attention. Old me would have been like, I'm busy. I have all this stuff on my head. I have to do everything. Right. And instead of just being like, hey, I get to listen to how my action made you feel. You get to have your experience. I'm having mine. And so that part of owning your side, right, is really owning what your experience was and deciding, did that feel good? And if it didn't, how do you want to approach that next time?
I love that. And one thing I want to bring up in this conversation is we talk a lot, and I know we talked about having a voice, right? And this comes up day after day, hour after hour with my clients. And so many of you struggle with your voice, right? And I'm not saying your real voice, but what I'm saying is we have family of origin stuff where we were silenced, where we were ridiculed, where we were told to be small, stop being annoying, like your opinion doesn't matter, throw some dirt in it, go to your room, calm down, whatever it is. And we all had these messages, right? And therefore, we never learn how to have the bad feelings, and we never know how to talk about them because we were put in our rooms and, lick our own wounds. And what do? We shove things down. So to your point, looking at your side of the street comes from family of origin stuff. I didn't have a voice. Why? I didn't know how to use it. I was never taught how to use it. I was taught to be the good girl, right? To not say the thing, to not ask the questions. And for those of you that are listening to this and this resonates, because I'm sure it resonates with 100% of you, because we all have this to some extent, working on it's okay to use your voice always. And if you use it, like Wendy was saying, you want to use your voice mindfully. And I want to tell you this, I want you to think about using your voice, and you come from a place of love. Imagine a giant pink sparkly heart in your abdomen. Okay. And when you are delivering something, maybe that was an ouch, right? Come from a place of love instead of coming from a place of reaction immediately. We all want to react, especially if we come from houses where we weren't allowed to have a voice, or houses where there was dysfunctional conflict and it was fight or flee or freeze, right? So in that moment, stop yourself. This is the person that loves you. Like Wendy's saying with Jeff, I can sense her coming out, and you take her and you put her back in the bottle and you're like, you're right. I'm really sorry. You told me to put a pin in that and I made you feel unimportant, right? Come from that place of love. Or if somebody wrongs you, say to them, instead of saying, well, when you did this, I felt like this. Another way where we, talk about at Smart Dating Academy is, hey, when you said this, the story I told myself was, you were thinking this about me. Am I making this up?
I love that
has been such a game changer in my own marriage, and will be 26 years this May. The story I'm telling myself right now is, right? And we've just been doing this for the last 5 years, game changing. And then it's even less, it's more, it gives that person the chance to explain their intentions, because it's kind of the definition of emotional intelligence. I feel a paper cut, but I might not be reading your intentions the right way. And as soon as I know, like, oh, I didn't mean that. What I meant was blah, blah, blah. And you're like, oh my God, suddenly I'm not hurt anymore. And you don't even have to go there. It's like the story I'm telling myself is, right, am I telling myself the right story? Own your side of the street.
Yes. Love that. Preach. So true. It's so true.
Own your side of the street. And now let's talk about your journey into the dating world, because most people here also want to know, who's Jeff and how did you get to Jeff?
That's a great question. I was telling Bela, I'm like, I kind of want to share like my dating perspective, because I think I come at it a little bit differently. When I'm coaching my clients and helping them to kind of see when they're ready to dive, into the dating world. And the way that I used dating was, as I was getting to know myself, as I was looking in the mirror and seeing who exactly was staring back at me, as I started actually knowing the voice that was coming out of my mouth and feeling confident in what she was saying, I decided to use dating as the way in which I was gaining confidence in being this new version of me. And what I want to say to expand on that is that I wasn't going out on dates to get affirmation or external validation for who I was. It was me showing up, not caring what the other person thought of who was showing up at these, dinners, or these drinks or these coffees. And so, or, talking on the phone. And so it was really important for me because all my friends were married. I didn't have single friends. That was like a whole community I had to create for myself. And I knew my ex-husband was dating. And in fact, by the time I started dating, he had already met somebody. And so I wanted to really get myself out there because I just wanted a man to take me out to dinner. As silly and simple as that sounds, that's really what I wanted. And it was, that. And I remember it was just so nice to have somebody want to talk to me, to want to get to know me. But one of the things that I quickly learned, and something that I love that you teach your clients, is that they get to earn the right to your story. So the one part that I fine-tuned along the way was how much to share and when. But irregardless of that, it still allowed me to really start being God, this feels really good. It feels so good to be me, to be all of me, and to not care what these guys are saying or thinking. And so I decided that I wanted to date for a couple of years. I didn't want to be in a serious relationship. I was with my ex-husband. We met when we were 18, got married at 25, divorced at 41, and I never dated. So I kind of lived my 20s in my early 40s because I never had that experience. And so it was a time for me to really just kind of sow my oats and get myself out there and just to date and meet all these different types of people. In my career, I worked in ad sales. And so I love a room. I love, I love meeting new people. I think it's really interesting to get to know people and their backgrounds. And it really wasn't until probably about 4 years after we had separated that I really was ready to be in a relationship. And so there was somebody before Jeff who I dated for about 1.5 years, but he was kind of he was what I needed. He's what my boys needed at the time. And my philosophy is that people come into your life for a reason, and they come in when you need, quote unquote, need them. Right. And so he was somebody who was just very fun and very lighthearted. And he was, he just gave my kids kind of the confidence that mom's going to find a really great guy who's going to love us and care about us, but he wasn't long-term. And after we broke up, I decided to sign up for Love Lab because I was okay, I am ready. That. I'm ready now. I am ready to find somebody. And, at this time, my kids were older. They knew I was dating. Their dad was already remarried, also had a young baby. And so I knew that my kids were in a good place. And while that wasn't the deciding factor, it was important to me that my kids be okay first. And it was also a piece of anytime I went on a date, I was very crystal clear, my kids will always come first. They are my blood and I love them, and my kids come first. And so anyway, I signed up for Love Lab because I was I am ready to go. And within the weekend, I had already I learned so much about myself.
Yay!
Because you ask really interesting questions of us as we are putting together our dating profile. And what I always credit you with is you taught me how awesome I was. I knew I was really awesome, but you heightened that exponentially for me just by writing my profile. And the power of really tapping into what makes you amazing, and also standing in the power of what it is that you want. I never thought about writing in my profile, what I'm looking for, or it's you make it so easy. And you made it so easy for me. And literally the same weekend that Bela and that I did Love Lab, I met Jeff.
I mean, what are the odds?
I mean,
Crazy.
I mean,
You were ready. You were ready.
I called him in and I manifested him because I got crystal clear on exactly what I just said, what I wanted. I mean, he checked every box and my list was really long, you guys. Like down to the age. I like guys that are, he has a shaved head. I wrote that down. Like just the height. I mean, you name it. It was like everything. He fit everything that I written down and I had manifested because I knew what I wanted. I was in a place where I was open to receive. And he and I, because it was COVID, that was the other thing. How do you date in COVID? I had learned how to date after, in my 40s doing online. Now I was like, oh God, what do we do in COVID? And one of the benefits of what you taught is really getting to know each other via phone, via video. And so Jeff and I had 3-hour plus conversation. The first night we talked for over 3 hours. And every night thereafter until our first date, we talked for over 3 hours every single night. And it was an intimacy that built. It wasn't the butterflies. It wasn't like the sexual attraction that I experienced when I was dating, previously. This was like, it was almost like I felt like he and I were planting a seed together and we were fertilizing, watering, and putting sun on it together and seeing how it was going to grow and what it was going to look like together. And we're still together 2.5 years later. Last August, we did a commitment ceremony in Maui with our kids. He moved in, we've combined families, we may get married one day, it's not off the table, but, for us, it's just important to be committed to each other. And I found my forever partner in love and life. And I'm just, it was, as my mom would say, it was besheret. It was meant to be.
Sure. Exactly. Right. Yeah. In the Jewish faith, if you help 3 people find their besherets, you're guaranteed a spot in heaven.
Well, Bella, you got your ticket a while ago.
Right. I can take some friends with me. Actually, I've done enough other reciprocal stuff. I probably need all of those hall passes to get into heaven. So yeah, right. Young Bella certainly, sowed her oats and had some fun. So I'm sure we're paying the price now. So
you're so funny.
Well, I'm so grateful that you came on here with so much authenticity. Is there anything that that we didn't cover that you any gems you want to impart on our listeners?
The last piece that I will just throw in that I touched on a little bit about the manifestation part, right? I do a lot of energy work on myself. I do energy work with my clients, and I talk about the energy healing that I do. And you don't have to be an energy healer or a healer or, somebody that's uber spiritual. But what I will say to you is that really faith and having confidence in a higher power, believing in the universe really plays a role in the trajectory that your life takes. And so I would just want to impart to everybody, it's so important that you maintain a certain amount of faith and trust and surrender in your path, and to lean into the vision of the life that you want and to not back down under any circumstances whatsoever, because you deserve to have the life that you want, the partner that you want, the abundance that you desire. It is all possible for you. And so I invite you to really call in guidance, from the higher powers that be to guide you on your path. It does take work, and it also takes a certain amount of trust that things are happening for you, even when it doesn't feel like it is.
I love that. And you guys, I'm going to put a link in the show notes to Wendy's book, which you can buy on Amazon, called Divorce Sucks. Now What? The 5 Steps to Find Yourself and Heal After Going from I Do to I'm Divorced. So thank you so much for being on with us. And, may we all find our voice. May we all know our worth, and may we all keep our side of the street clean, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you for having me, Bella. It's always so wonderful to chat with you. So
oh my God, love you, girl.
Love you too.